This conference will now be recorded.
So I was originally assuming that entities that cared about time series data would have we could have some abstraction to a database that they would access to see what the patterns were. The reason for that being that for memory, an individual error tells you almost nothing about what's failed. You have to look at the pattern over time. And I went back and I think maybe Vlog or someone else said this, but I talked to the people inside Google that are working on this, and they said, "Well, why are you doing that? Why don't you just send the time series, the last X errors to the tool to start with?" And so I just put the time series database feeding the tool, and I don't have a strong feeling about it. I just wanted to mention that we had talked about that, so I drew the drawing to show an alternative, and that may be simpler because it's just now you send a series of errors.
And that's part of CSP infrastructure. So we do expect implementation variations there. Isn't that
Yeah,
right?
I think, but at the end of the day, the memory analyzer needs a way to look for patterns, and I suspect that the CPU tools do as well. And so we just have to say, do we send the pattern up front, or do they query for the additional data they want to something else? And we just need to decide that, and then then there will be some variation. We can wrap it however we want. And I'm for conservation of effort. So this actually seemed easier.
Yeah, that's true.
But if someone doesn't like it, speak up. I'm not, like I don't have a strong opinion. This just, they said, "Drew, why did you do that?" And I said, "I don't know. You've got a better idea than I do."
Yeah, that looks good to me.
So maybe the other thing that we'll have to sort out as we work through the memory stuff is how do we determine how much of a time series do we send? What do we need to find the pattern? If you have, just for example, we have a giant database of errors, and I can go find a memory error that occurred 10 years ago. I don't believe that's terribly relevant to something that happens today. So there is some extreme at which we just say, you know what, that's the past, it doesn't matter. But if I had a memory error a month ago at the same address, maybe that's interesting. Or, maybe if I've had 100,000 errors, maybe we don't need at the same address. Maybe we don't need all of them. So we'll have to just think about what does this time series look like that we send the analyzers, and maybe.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
I think yeah. What I think is the implementation would prune the length of what is relevant by many factors. So what workload, what technology, what kind of system, which vendor, all those will play into what is relevant. And that is the analysis tool implementation, which I think we don't want to be prescriptive of that. We do want to be suggestive. Vendors may want to, or CSPs may want to limit or scope the relevance of the database by so and so factors, and everyone is smart; they'll figure it out.
That matches what I was thinking, Yogesh. And so the question I had in the back of my head is, is there a one size fits all standard? And I suspected that there wasn't. And so it might be that when we get an analyzer from a particular vendor, they have some way of encoding how many errors they want, or maybe we need to come up with a description when you take the analyzer in of what you pass to it. It was just something we need to think about, and I don't know what the answer is.
So Drew, I had a question on this drawing. Is this a pull function or a push function, in the sense that I thought the analyzer would request data as a pull function, and therefore it'll know how much and where to pull from?
Or they could
who's
be.
directed?
like the analyzer. So the problem that we have today, and by the way, I'm so sorry I missed that meeting earlier today, Antonio. I totally spaced it. Sorry, public apology. I screwed up.
No need,
But
no need.
so what I would say today, we've talked about a Python script or something along those lines, and that Python script knows, little or nothing about the whole chain of tools that connect the machines through the cloud to the place where we collect all the errors and analyze them. And so I'm imagining that we call an analyzer when we have errors. So there's some sort of redfish event that surfaces a CPER error log. That CPER error log goes through the front end, gets stored in the database, and then something between the database and the analyzer says, okay, I know this tool needs some logs. I'm going to send it the new error that I got, along with whatever other data we've agreed to send it. And then the analyzer draws a conclusion from that.
In that case, I would recommend that we split the feeds into your database, because one thing is feeding data, which rightfully goes into a database. The other thing is feeding a signal. So Redfish can produce both the data and the signaling, but the signaling could go to an agent that then triggers the chain. Either triggers the analyzer to request data or triggers the database to release data to the analyzer. But I think that's a kind of an agent that receives a signal more than a database, right? So
Oh,
splitting the
sure. I
two
mean, there is
things.
something. Yeah, there is something. I can put something between them that says, it follows whatever policy there is. As far as we're concerned, when we get a new error, we send it to the analyzer and say, hey, what do you think? And the analyzer sorts out whether it's important or not.
Yeah, but there's a part of me that thinks that every analyzer will be slightly different. So I want them to be able to phrase a query. Like, I need last month's errors on this part, or I need the
Agreed.
fleet model that I had. So there will be differences between them. So they need to phrase a query somehow, and instead of us
Right.
giving them information, I want them to request it so that
Well,
they
it
can
may
phrase
not
it.
be that they request it, though. I guess what they could do is they could say up front, when you get an error, here's what I want. Um, or maybe that is what they do. We say, hey, we had an error of this type, and then they come back and ask for more information. But I think the simpler we can make this interface, the better. So I really like the idea of just giving them a string of error logs according to the lines of something they asked for ahead of time, if that's possible. But I agree with everything you say. We'll have to try this out and see what people end up needing. Does that make sense?
Yep, agreed.
And I'll put another. You're right that there is. It's really not the database feeding it directly. There is some sort of thing that gives the analysis tools. It calls them with whatever they were thinking they needed.
Okay, and a lot of this, like you guys says, will be clarified once we start doing pilots and things like that, because there will be implementation specific, and then there'll be a trend to follow.
I'm just going to call it database interface for now. I don't, and we'll figure out how that works later. When we know more about how it's going to work, I'll change it to a better name, and I'll clean the drawing. But I'm thinking of something like that, and then we can rename it unless someone knows already how it's going to work. But I sure don't.
How does this model work for? I think that's kind of a weird question, but does this model work for non-CSP, OEM, enterprise kind of installations also? Any thoughts from our OEM partners here?
I mean, I think that's Jeff or Mark, or I think I saw Scott. I'm putting you all on the spot because
I like being on the spot. Does the microphone work?
yeah, we hear you.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely workloads that this could work. But like one of the things that's great about CSP is they have a very like ownership of it end to end and the infrastructure, and in our end we sort of have varying degrees of it. So,
Yeah.
But I think there's definitely certain scenarios where something like this works.
Okay. And I guess like when I was working on Superdomes, it had something built in kind of like this. But I guess the question is, could the place where it's running its analysis tools run a vendor provided analyzer? I don't pretend to speak for HP anymore, but they had something along these lines already. I don't know if this would work or not for what they're doing now.
There's one thing I think that's an interesting advantage to having sort of the analyzers offline, and that if you had an in system solution, or if you had like an any in system solution would require updating, when in this case that update is a centralized location,
Yeah.
and it's easier. So
That's very, very true, Scott. That's one of the things that drove us this direction. I think you've hit the nail on the head, because we can, like if we find that we're taking the wrong action, we don't have to do a rollout. When we do a BIOS rollout, it's usually pretty intrusive, and we've got to reboot a whole bunch of things, and we don't want to roll it out all at once because we might take our fleet out. So we dribble the release out. It takes months to update all of our machines. And so with this, it's an analyzer somewhere in our back end. We can even run multiple of them at the same time and compare how well they're doing, multiple versions. So I think that you've nailed one of the key things that I like about it.
And this could also work for, sorry, am I interrupting?
No, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I just got latched on offline comment by Scott. I think this could also work for uh, field data from different customers. You can collect it and feed to a database and run the analyzers offline, especially for smaller customers who don't have all the infrastructure, but they still want benefit of troubleshooting or correlating with the smarter, larger, centralized analysis infrastructure.
Yeah. The only problem we had that I've seen is that uh, folks vary in how much they're willing to poke a hole in their firewall and send the data out of their company. But some people are okay with it, especially if you can tell them what you're sending. And that may be the beauty of this is it's a CPR log. It's chipset error logging registers. So hopefully we could explain that and make that more palatable to them. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, Mark, I was waiting for you, Mark. Go for it.
Yeah, my experience is they'll no way ever let you transfer data out of the data center. My experience is they won't let me in, and they won't let anything out. And
Yeah.
I don't blame them. And I mean, at least in some cases, that getting data out of a data center is going to be problematic, I think, for most customers.
So it may be that you'd have to, if you were like if HP were to use this, could you imagine? You have Insight remote support or something, right? Something that runs locally in the data center that maybe customers would run. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think it would have to be integrated, right? Everything would have to be integrated where it would just run by itself.
Okay, so maybe this would be integrated into something like Insight remote support, and it would run the analyzer.
Right, or it would just be built into the BMC, and the BMC would, do it locally. it really doesn't matter infrastructure wise. But the idea is I just say it would need to be self-contained because piping it out of the data center is not likely to happen.
Yeah. I do think that's like a huge advantage that the giant cloud service providers have, is that it is our data center. We can do with what we want to with the data. So what you're saying makes absolute sense to me, Mark. That other customers would be different.
Yeah, well, I do. I would just ask the question, would you let me into your data center?
You know what the answer is, Mark? They don't let me in the data center.
Yeah, I
So
don't blame them, right? They, they,
yeah,
they probably have a rule that says no engineers allowed.
well, it's
So there's also remember the other group, the fleet scale something, the other OCP group, they designed a way to do a hierarchy where they filter the data so they can give it to hardware vendors. And that database has a few filters on the way there, so that each hardware vendor will only get their data already with already clean, like no data center data included, no other hardware vendor data. And they designed that was part of the paper that they presented in the summit
yeah.
last year. So that's another option, right? Because they're designing a way to give us access to the data and clean it, right? And because
But that
of
was more
all of
for
those
quality.
concerns.
So Antonio, that was more for quality. So, like for instance, Google shares uh, error data with silicon vendors, and we have rules about what we share. And that was what I was understanding they were addressing there, is that they were saying because it doesn't matter. We're not asking, for instance, if I send memory data back to let's just say Micron. Um, I'm not asking necessarily Micron to diagnose a single machine and tell me, well, what's wrong with this precise DIMM? What I'm doing is saying, hey, Micron, we've got this fleet of your parts. Is the fleet healthy? So they can look at statistics. They can look for patterns. They can say, is the fit rate what we expect? But they don't need even the full sample of every Micron DIMM to infer how well they're doing. So that's a little different, and I think that's those are more along the lines of the policy of the model-based computing group. At least that was my understanding.
Oh,
So
good.
so I think that's a problem that that the server vendors will have to figure out, like the Mark Fletchers and the Scott Ramseys of the world, is how do they take whatever we're doing here and make use of it in other use cases? And so I guess what I'd say is, Mark and Scott, if you see something where we can make it a little easier, then speak up, and we'll try to hear you out.
Yeah, so I think I agree with Drew. Ultimately if you're talking about filtering the data by vendor and then providing it to the vendor, that means you've already done the analysis. Now, for that data, I don't think that has to be done in an integrated fashion. That can be done anywhere,
Yeah.
post processing, right? I think the key for me here is that, there's really multiple aspects, but the important one is, determining the effective action from the data that you're collecting. So if you're sitting there monitoring and you're getting corrected errors off the system, at some point your BMC is going to have to, analyze the data, determine the action, and implement it. And the idea is that I think Drew has showed that in several methods, but that can be done away from the BMC on a different, you know, server perhaps, where it can analyze data and then return back to the BMC the recommended action. Right? That's also possible. But I from where I live, I think the simpler integrated solution always works better. So the idea is that the BMC would basically be the effective agent that would analyze and determine the effective actions.
So I think one of the keys there is that we'll try. Well, I think the goal will be that these analyzers need to be fairly self-contained, so that they're not a lot of dependencies. They don't go out and make network calls, and they don't go. They get a chunk of data and they tell you what they think of that chunk of data, and that way they'll be a little bit more portable. And if you decide that you are comfortable running Python scripts or whatever in your BMC, you can do it and not worry about strange network calls or some library dependency that would make life hard.
Yeah, agreed. And then ultimately that CPU analyzer can run anywhere, right? It could be on the BMC and on your, ultimate analyzer as well.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, and the only issue I think, and obviously you'll have control here, but we still have this problem in that, some customers are concerned that there might be IP embedded in the data that we're collecting. And so they don't, essentially they don't let data out of their data center for that reason.
yeah. But I guess my experience with those vendors or those companies was that they would let you say, I need a service call, come bring me a new DIM. So if you send an English message that says, I think there's a bad DIM, it needs to be replaced. They're generally okay with that because they can read it, right?
Right. But that assumes that you
You
are
don't,
able to collect data, analyze it, and determine the effective action.
exactly. Yeah, I'm agreeing with you. Is what I was
Yeah.
trying. I was trying to agree with you.
Yeah. And the idea is I think that works as long as it's an integrated solution because you're essentially not letting any data go out of the data center.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes me feel pretty good. I think this is a decent direction, and we'll just have to, continue to get feedback from you all as we dig into exactly how this is implemented, and maybe just make sure we don't prevent you from running it other places like the BMC. Okay. Well, that was all. I mean, I didn't mean to take up that much time even. I just wanted to throw this idea out there and say, hey, we need to think about this. So thank you for the discussion. It was good. So, Yogesh, was there anything else that you wanted to
I
cover
don't,
today?
I don't think we had any other agenda items for today. I just just got done kind of with that document, so I think we can call a short meeting and try to, whenever we get time, try to make progress on that document and get it in. Right.
Awesome. Well, happy 3-day weekend, everyone.
Oh yeah,
Hopefully,
it is a long weekend.
hopefully most of you have a 3-day weekend.
No such luck here.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bill.
Yeah.
Hey, Drew, yes, before you, I'm trying to remember if we had, did we review in this meeting the WIP document that I pushed out from the Redfish forum on the platform registry and that small bits of stuff? I don't remember if we had reviewed that here. That was done.
I don't think we did that, Jeff.
Yeah,
Did we?
Jeff, we reviewed the ability to do like a base 64, including some base 64 CPR records directly in an error log and how to attach the CPR error logs to it. And by the way, I approved your poll. Claire grabbed me and said, "Hey, Drew, Jeff's waiting on you." I didn't know, so I'm really sorry about that.
No, it's okay. I was making sure that it's been that was last year, so I'm trying to remember what who had seen it and who hadn't, and but it's like, well, I haven't seen any movement on it, so that was is that because no one's reviewed it or because we never told them to go look at it? So
okay, well, it looks great.
Which proposal was that? Actually, I don't know. It's just me or everyone else knows, and I just wasn't there on that meeting. But which
This is one where Jeff showed us how we could embed CPR logs and the error records out of the BMC.
Okay, yeah.
We did it here. We discussed it here.
Did we? Okay. because I mean, I can pull that deck up again, or I can just put the link in the chat to where it's, where you can download it. If we've reviewed it here, we don't need to do it again. But
Well, the second thing you mentioned, I'm not sure about. The thing you originally mentioned.
the error messages.
So we looked at what the error messages look like and how to put CPR logs in them, but I thought you mentioned something else initially, and I wasn't sure they were the same thing.
Yeah, that's what I was also latched on, 64-bit something.
Yes, that base 64, the ability to attach or to insert a little bit of, a reasonable amount of data into an error, into a log entry, as opposed to just providing a link to a, binary blob of, hey, here's this,
okay.
here's a gigabyte of data. If you want it, go get it, and it's related to this particular, log entry error message.
So I remember that one, Jeff. If you don't mind, just drop the link in the chat, and I'll just send it to Reflector just one more time, just to make sure that everyone has awareness.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Thank you so much, Jeff, and thanks for all your help on that. That's really helping us. And that's the thing that I'm actually trying to really drill into people is I keep hearing people go, "Oh, we'll send an error log here, an error log there, and we'll just join them together at the end." I'm like, no. In the BMC season error, we want to go gather all the stuff so that we can analyze it. All of it. So I'm imagining all these analysis things go in parallel, and then we do some sort of reconciliation where we say, oh yeah, we got this internal, CPU parity error or something, but we had a voltage regulator problem. Fix the voltage regulator because that could easily cause a CPU error. So I'm hoping we can avoid joins wherever possible.
Right. Yeah.
I thought you said joins are the reason for all the bliss in the life. Didn't you say that too?
No, joins are the root of all evil. Just like premature optimization. Like if there was a fault management equivalent to what Seymour Cray said, that would be it. Joins are the root of all evil.
It's the time of day where Yogesh is trolling Drew. So.
I'm already
excited.
I'm already in the 5 p.m. Friday mode, as you can see.
I think we need a beer.
That's true.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody. And if you don't have a great 3-day weekend, I'm sorry if you lost, but I hope the rest of you have a good vacation and it's not or break and it's not too wet.
So
we're swimming over.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yes. So I mean, in order to update the document, can we update it directly and then like it might show up as comments, and then somebody we can like jointly review and then accept those changes?
It'll be suggesting, I believe. So you'll suggest and it'll show that you suggested something. Is that what you did, Yogesh?
You know what? I made everyone commented for suggesting. Okay. Do they have to be editors?
I don't know.
I can suggest as a commenter.
Maybe so. If you put comments in, we can go back and.
What I do, Sakul, is I select the phrase that I want to change and I select it and then I add a comment on that. So it just highlights that area. And then you can add a comment on what you want it to look like.
Sounds good. Yeah, we can go clean that up.
Okay.
Okay, does that answer your question, Sakul?
Yes. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay.
All right, guys. Thank you all for everything. Happy New Year again, and happy long weekend for those who have it.
Okay. Thanks a bunch.
Thanks, folks.
Long live MLK.